Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we are once again back in Warframe because you guys voted for this, so here we are, and today we have the newly built and upgraded with this beautiful skin, Vauban Prime. He just got this stunning new heirloom skin and I quite like it. I spent a while trying to customize it, so maybe short video tutorial coming soon. If you like the colors, I think it looks quite good. And you can of course customize it however you like. He's got so much going on and yeah, it's just a very good skin. Okay, but back to actually being Vauban for a second. So this Warframe was the greatest Warframe ever for crowd control. And now he's also got so much damage that he can deal with pretty much every type of enemy in the game in a matter of seconds, even in Steel Path. But that's enough introductions for now, so let's jump into the build. Starting from Vauban's abilities. His passive allows him to deal 1.25 times more damage to all incapacitated enemies. And those are enemies under crowd control, so whatever ability you have that applies a crowd control effect on enemies, that means you can deal more damage to them. His first ability is usually Tesla Nervos, and that ability summons rollers that deal electricity damage to enemies they attach to, but we won't be needing that for today's build, so I instead replaced it with Tempest Barrage. And by using this ability, we can summon a barrage or a tempest of these massive water harpoons, and they deal corrosive damage, which also applies the corrosive status, and this will get rid of enemies' armor. And with the augment we can also apply viral, and that means we can just deal more damage both by removing armor and debuffing enemies so they take more damage. And all of that inside just one ability cast. Moving to the second ability, we have Mind Layer. And this ability has two modes. You can either tap the ability or hold it, and depending on what you do, you will summon different things. By just tapping the ability, you summon the Fleshat Tether Orb, and this will both deal damage to enemies that are inside its radius. It has a random chance of firing in different directions, so it's not perfect, but it does mostly target any enemy that's inside of it, so it's gonna usually hit something. As for the tether part of it, it means it will just grab enemies that are nearby and CC them, or you can just cast this orb on a wall and it will stick to that thanks to these tethers. While the hold version of the ability summons the Vector Overdrive Pad, and this will both accelerate you or enemies that touch it and just push them or yourself in that direction at very high speed. And if you or your allies pass on these pads, you gain both a movement speed and a weapon damage bonus. Then we have Photon Strike, which is his third ability, and this is just a very straightforward one which just deals a massive amount of blast damage to all enemies inside a certain radius, and you can have as many of these as you want as long as you have energy, so just keep casting them and keep just looking at the beautifully animated massive pillar of light coming from the sky. And last but not least, we have Bastille, which is an ability that was not too long ago his best one and the only one usable on Vauban. And what this ability does is it will either create a Bastille or a Vortex, depending on how you cast the ability. So by just tapping the ability, you will summon a Bastille that will trap all enemies inside and suspend them in air, and it removes all their armor if they have any, and by removing this armor you also gain some for yourself, which is not that big of a deal because Vauban doesn't really have that much HP to make use of the armor, but it's still a buff that can trigger, for example, some main canon evolutions or some other mods or whatever, so it's a pretty neat little thing. But if you hold the ability, you will instead collapse all existing Bastilles or create a new Vortex, and this version of the ability will instead pull all enemies inside the central spot of the Vortex and deal magnetic damage with a status chance of 47% in this case, and that makes enemies' shields a lot easier to deal with. Now, a recent-ish addition to his kit is that his Mind Layer and Photon Strike now deal more damage based on how high the enemy level is, and that is great because before they were dealing some okay damage, especially the actual Fleshat Orb, but Photon Strike was suffering way too much from enemies' level scaling, and now it isn't. Now it's just dealing massive blasts of damage and killing anything in sight, which is beautiful. But now moving to the actual mods, this is what I'm using on Vauban Prime. Corrosive Projection to remove enemies' armor by 18%. You don't have to have this one, you can have any other aura you like. I just like not having to deal with the about 20% enemies armor, so I can just go straight to their HP and deal more damage from the get-go. Then Prime Sure-Footed in the extra slot, which is I wouldn't want to say it's mandatory because it isn't, but it's great to have it. But if you don't have it, just go for Handspring, which will make you recover faster from knockdowns, and it's as good as Prime Sure-Footed. I was using this for the majority of my early game till I actually got Prime Sure-Footed, so yeah, totally worth considering as an option. Then Transient Fortitude and Ogre Secrets for more ability strength at the cost of some ability duration, but that's not a big deal because we are using priming continuity to then instead counter this negative. Then Archon Stretch for more ability range, and also to restore energy whenever we deal electricity damage with our abilities. This also includes our companion abilities, which means we can use that one to trigger this passive. Then Overextended for even more damage at the cost of a lot of ability strength, but this is fine because we're using Molt Augmented, which grants us that 60% back whenever we kill those 250 enemies. Equilibrium to restore energy from health pickups and vice versa. And then I am using two augments. The first one is Viral Tempest, and that's the one that allows our Tempest Barrage to also apply Viral. So it's not mandatory once again, but it's just great to have another way of applying Viral, which isn't priming enemies with a weapon. We just cast Tempest Barrage instead, and that will both apply Corrosive and Viral, which is pretty cool. And the other augment is Photon Repeater, that whenever we hit at least 5 enemies with our Photon Strike, we will then gain a free cast of the next Photon Strike, and that next Photon Strike will also be fired 2 additional times, which means we are tripling the damage of this ability and making it cost 0 energy. And as long as you keep rocking that passive, this augment passive, we can just cast Photon Strikes on Photon Strikes after Photon Strikes forever, and you'll see this deal millions of damage. So it's quite a good thing to have in endgame missions. As for the Arcanes, as I said, I am using Molt Augmented for more power strength, and Arcane Steadfast is great on this build because we are casting so many abilities, so we have a very high chance of actually triggering the passive, which grants us those 3 free ability casts. It's just a great way to save on even more energy, which means we can spam even more Photon Strikes. Yes, you got it. Now moving to the Archon Shards, the ones I am using are 2 of the Azure Shards with Energy Max, because Vauban at base only has 225, and this will boost it all the way up to 375. 1 Ember Shard for more casting speed, because we're gonna cast so many abilities that this is just a must on a build like this. Then 1 Emerald Shard with more ability damage against enemies affected by Corrosive, and since we are applying Corrosive with Tempest Barrage, this is pretty much always active, and we're just gonna deal 15% more damage to all enemies, which is pretty cool. And then the last slot can be completely up to you, so if you don't want to use my choice, just use something else. And what I went for is a Topaz Shard that will restore 7.5 shields whenever we kill enemies with blast damage. And since we are dealing blast damage with Photon Strike, we can easily restore our shields in a matter of seconds. And since we are also using the Ogre set, we are already gaining some shields, because this won't be triggered if you are at 0 shields. So you gotta have some shields before being able to restore more shields. So this will pretty much always trigger, which is pretty cool. Now moving to the weapons, you can go for whatever you like. I just went for some options I enjoy using, and those are the Strum Prime with these evolutions. I recently made a video comparing the Strum Prime against the Strum Wraith, so if you want to check that out, link in the top right corner of your screen right now. But the build for this weapon is the usual hybrid high damage build for any kind of weapon, and I also have a Raven, which is not the best Raven ever, but it's solid, since this weapon has a 4 out of 5, so this is just my good enough build to carry into any kind of game mode which I want to play. Then on the Kuvanuker, I have my Ogre setup, and That's because it uses 2 of the Augur mods, and that is to increase the amount of energy we convert into shields by a lot, and so we now convert 120% of the energy we spend into shields. And all the other mods are just some primer build mods. You can go for more damage, honestly. It's completely up to you. This is just a stat stick build, just so I can get more Augur mods into the build, and that's pretty much it. And then I am using the Tenet Axac because this weapon is insane. And once again, if you want to see the full build guide and showcase, link in the top right corner of your screen. But I just really like this melee weapon, and with the addition of melee Karine, you can see some funny numbers and also freeze enemies for free just by rolling. And that can happen every 2 seconds. It's so useful in so many occasions. I cannot recommend this build enough. I think it's one of the coolest things I have tried in a while, so totally worth going for this weapon. And then the focus tree I went for is Zeroric, and that is mostly because we already have an easy way to group up enemies, which means we can make use of the actual focus skill abilities, especially the actual Turn Strike, and that means we have easy access to a lot more cast speed, ability strength, ability duration, and even additional energy, which, you know, on a build that has very low, it's pretty good. The only requirement is having a lot of lenses in your build, because the more lenses you have, the faster you're gonna charge the actual Turn Strike, so totally do that. But yeah, if you don't have the Turn Strike unlocked yet, you can just use it for the usual more energy from pickups, the actual 5 energy per second whenever you cast the first ability on your operator, and the additional 20% ability strength just by standing inside the bubble. So yeah, overall pretty good. Now for the companion, you can use whatever you want, but my recommendation is the Dirigam or any pet/companion that has an ability that deals electricity damage, and that's because since we're using our Archon Shards, we do need something that applies electricity to actually trigger the passive, and the Dirigat does it quite easily. It's also a pretty solid sentinel to have just as a shield support in general, so I quite like it. And like, you can add more presets if you want. I don't really need it to deal damage or anything, so that's it. And this is the build for the Volclock. Yeah, very well built. I know it's a great thing to have. It's such a good weapon. Okay, but that's pretty much the whole build, so let's now see it in action. And as always, I'll have my 20 core rapid heavy gunners level 230 with still path modifiers. And we're already gaining some energy from the drops I had on the ground. But okay, so let's get our additional ability strength from standing inside the bubble. So what is the rotation? You cast your vortex, so you hold your 4, and then you cast a bunch of Tempest Barrages, and then, you know, just cast a couple of Photon Strikes. And I mean, they were already dead on the first hit from Photon Strike, but it's not that big of a deal. We can do it again. There we go. That's what happens. And like, this buff you get from actually hitting 5 enemies with your Photon Strike doesn't have any cooldown. So like, as long as you hit 5 enemies, you can then like move to somewhere else and cast the Photon Strike again wherever you need to, which means it's great because you don't have to waste this buff always. You can just do it whenever you need to do it. So I want to do it now, let's say. There we go. It just does it whenever I wanted to. And since we did hit those 5 enemies on the first strike, we also gained the buff again. That's what I meant when I said you can just do this over and over and over, because you actually can. So yeah, there's that. As for the tether, I like it. It just deals some very solid damage. It's absolutely passive as an ability. And if you cast your 4 and you just drop the tethers inside, they will always hit something, so this happens. So that, plus the Photon Strike, plus the fact that you are always CCing enemies, plus them being debuffed by Corrosive and Viral, it is a deadly combo. And I have never seen anything survive more than 5 seconds in any game mode. And in addition to all of this, since we have so much energy regen, so much just free energy, just so many ways to just restore energy, we can just keep spamming our abilities for a while without our energy being able to go down. I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best to make it go down. It just is not. So yeah, you can do this and just touch the, the ceiling. Yeah, anyway, enough silliness. That you get it. It's very easy to keep up with the build, and we are so good at restoring shields. Let me unpause the enemies. I'm not gonna use the vortex because otherwise, like, it wouldn't be as well as difficult to survive. Let's say, yeah. So there we go. We are casting our abilities, and I mean, they're already dead. Like, you can't really say, but like, usually you won't be seeing enemies at all. And since we do have the free casts, it won't activate most of the time the Ogre set. And that's why I went for the Topaz Shard, because that allows us to at least have a way to restore shields. Now for your weapons, I'm only gonna showcase the actual exec, because I mean, you can probably guess what the Shun does, and the Nucor, although not built for damage, deals enough to deal like acceptable damage to enemies. Like, it's not great, but it's not bad either. But most importantly, so I'm just gonna cast my Tempest Barrage to apply Viral. And yeah, you can now do this. So what you can guess quite easily is that if you cast your Vortex and you do one slam, funny numbers, funny numbers, you won't be seeing enemies, you just see numbers on your screen. Like that. Just like that. Just dropping a few millions. Yeah, I am enjoying this. I am having a lot of fun. And yeah, that is Vauban Prime. This is such a great Warframe to just mess with, and honestly, you guys should totally give him a try, especially because he's so dripped up now. Look at this beautiful freaking heirloom skin. I love it so much. Yeah, I'll be releasing a short video with all the details about this this fashion if you're interested in that. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So I'm gonna leave you guys to the showcase where I test this build for 10 minutes in a Grenier Steel Pass Survival, so you can see how it performs in a more realistic scenario. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, and if you wanna see more of my content, remember to subscribe. Happy Lunar New Year. I'm pretty sure this is gonna release the 17th, so yeah, it took me a while to get everything for this video, but yeah, happy Lunar New Year. I wish you a beautiful rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching, and bye bye.
No seu movimento, perco direção, mas sigo firme, sigo tua vibração. Chama que eu vou te encontrar, nem Ah,